Welcome to the Economy Magazine. I'm Benjamin Chong Alfares with an in-depth look at the latest events across the world economy and the financial markets. Today, we explore Airbus's landmark deal with Japan Airlines, and we check out a new phenomenon called punk economics. First, the headlines. As the US government enters a second week since it shut down, markets worldwide are starting to feel the pressure. The FTSE All-World Equity Index slipped 0.4%, Europe's Stock 600 opened 0.5% in the red, and Asia-Pacific was down 0.9%. The dollar index was just slightly above an 8-month low at 80.03. As the October 17 deadline for raising the US borrowing limit draws closer, a fierce stock market slide is increasingly likely.
That's why I won't pay a ransom in exchange for reopening the government. And I certainly won't pay a ransom in exchange for raising the debt ceiling. For as reckless as a government shutdown is, an economic shutdown that comes with default, with America not paying its bills, would be dramatically worse.
Going now to Israel, where Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway bought its third Israeli firm, electronics company RayQ Interconnect. RayQ supplies connectivity equipment to the military and aerospace industries and was founded in 1969. Berkshire Hathaway's first Israeli acquisition, Iskar Metalworking, for $6 billion, continues to be its largest. In Indonesia, Chinese President Xi Jinping and Thai Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra met for bilateral talks ahead of the APEC forum. Xi and Yingluck discussed cooperation on infrastructure projects such as high-speed railways as well as water conservation. The APEC meeting will focus on structural reforms to increase productivity, labor force participation, and high-quality job creation in the region. Also in Asia, the World Bank lowered its 2013 and 2014 economic growth forecasts for China and East Asia's emerging markets. Developing countries across East Asia are expanding at a slower pace as China shifts from an export-oriented economy to focus on domestic demand. Growth in larger middle-income countries such as Thailand and Indonesia is also weaker due to a drop in investment, lower global commodity prices, and feeble exports. And Airbus announced a landmark $9.5 billion order with Japan Airlines. Japan Airlines, whose fleet is 70% made by Boeing, is buying 31 Airbus jets. The deal is Airbus's first with Japan Airlines and its largest in Japan. It is a second setback for Boeing after South Korea canceled an $8 billion tender for fighter jets it was likely to win. More in this in the following story.
This could be the beginning of a new era for the Japanese aerospace industry. Airbus has finalized an historic deal with Japan Airlines, which includes 31 A350s with an option on 25 additional aircraft. It's a deal worth $9.5 billion.
This is also the Airbus largest order for the A350 so far this year. And this is the largest ever order we have received from a Japanese customer, underlining our strategic partnership moving forward.
This is a huge victory for Airbus and a loss for Boeing, which so far had monopolized the Japanese market. The U.S. group had benefited from its links with local suppliers and close diplomatic and political ties between Washington and Tokyo. Boeing holds about 80% of the market share in Japan, and it's only about 10% for Airbus. After Japan Airlines was rescued in 2010, the company decided to change its direction and end its dependence on a single supplier. The setbacks associated with the Boeing 787 confirm that this may have been the right move. After several months and delivery delays, the Dreamliner remains grounded due to battery problems.
By buying the A350, we hope to continue our safe operations while also looking to become #1 in terms of customer satisfaction.
The A350 will enter service next year, and it already has many customers throughout the world. Singapore Airways, Qatar Airways, and Lufthansa are all counted amongst them. As well, Japan Airlines could also order 20 more aircraft to renew its fleet in 2020. Globally, Airbus has taken the lead in 2013. Over the last 9 months, the European aircraft manufacturer has already sold more units than in all of 2012.
Punk may be dead, but punk economics is very much alive. Economist and author David Mcwilliams offers a 9-hour-long course on the internet that makes economics accessible to the masses. More in the following report.
Somebody clever, now I can't exactly remember who it was, whether it was Einstein or Roy Keane, once said that the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, this is exactly what Europe is doing. The more austerity we have, the less growth.
It's not every day that you come across a world-renowned economist like David Mcwilliams, but he is one of a growing number of economists responding in creative ways to the economic climate of the day. Mcwilliams, who calls himself a punk economist, is a hard-hitting critic who knows how to push buttons.
If we all consumed like the United States, we'd need 5 worlds to satisfy that consumption. So either we reduce our consumption, or there's going to be some conflict.
When global markets crashed in 2008, and millions woke up to the stark reality that the rules of the economic system were benefiting the few at the expense of the many, it led to the birth of a number of protest movements. From the Indignados in Spain to Occupy Wall Street and others around the world, these mass movements started to wonder about the economies they were living in and why they were crashing. What was going wrong? Another response led some economists to set out in making the discipline of economics more accessible in order to inform the huge influx of people seeking answers. Documentaries such as Inside Job and animated YouTube videos such as The Crisis of Capitalism started appearing in the public discourse. Suddenly, the once boring but wholly important field of economics became the hottest subject, and one Irish economist was among the vanguard in bridging the economic knowledge gap.
David Mcwilliams. I'm an Irish economist, and I suppose I've devoted many, many years to trying to make economics as understandable to as many people as possible in order to create a sort of better appreciation of economics. So that means doing plays, doing cartoons, doing lectures.
He's also a prolific public speaker, journalist, and the author of a number of books, including The Good Room, How We Ended Up in a Debtor's Prison and How We Can Break Free. David's videos, which are punchy, fast-paced, and informative, are making a splash. The videos he produces have garnered hundreds of thousands of YouTube views, and it's not hard to understand why.
And what I want to share with you is the idea that economics is truly about people's everyday lives, about your everyday life. Because the interesting thing about economics is just how surprisingly similar all these crises, booms and busts and bank failures actually are.
In his videos, he also interviews celebrities such as Woody Harrelson and Bono, global policymakers such as Hillary Clinton, critics such as Naomi Klein, and economists such as Paul Krugman, which works to attract more people to learn in his digital domain. Punk Economics may be his flagship project. The videos are an essential weapon in Mcwilliams' educational arsenal, and they are animated explanations of complicated ideas. The magic is found in taking seemingly complicated notions and making them visually and linguistically accessible.
With all this money sloshing around the world, the price of other assets are rising because there's simply so much cash looking for a new home. For example, why would anybody in the markets hold on to something that has been printed every day, like cash, when you can buy with it something that's actually running out, like oil? The basic rule of supply and demand is pushing the price of oil through the roof.
If that doesn't seem punk enough on first glance, Mcwilliams, in the punk spirit of pushing limits and reinventing, isn't afraid to say what he thinks about his field.
We're blessed by the lack of communication skills of the vast majority of the economics profession. I think the economics profession hides behind failed mathematics, and actually failed mathematicians hide behind economics and have hijacked it over the last couple of years. And I think the economics profession, particularly the classical economics profession, has kind of ceded sense. And when your basic assumptions are not sensible, then you probably tend to lead to rather implausible outcomes.
The troublesome area for Mcwilliams is the disconnect between economic policies that are based on infinite growth models and the real-world fact that the Earth is finite.
We have 7 billion people in the world. We are selling them a myth that there can all be 7 billion consumers. If they do become 7 billion consumers, you have the insatiable appetite of those 7 billion consumers smashing into the limitations of the world's finite resources.
In the end, though, the punk economist sees a great deal of potential for humanity, and he remains cautiously optimistic.
Betting the house on the end of the world is a sort of a messianic approach, isn't it? And I wouldn't be really in that camp.
And on the subject of punk, we're joined now by Daniel Roth. Okay, so is this real? I mean, is this a good way of giving information over, or is this just a critique on our society that's, you know, sort of ADD ridden, like, you know, TV enslaved, so to speak?
I think it's a little of both, actually, and when you read about punk economics in the description on his website, he makes careful note that this isn't a simplification of economics. He's not trying to dumb it down for people.
Right.
He's trying to make it accessible. And those two things, I think, are it's a very different idea and very important difference. At the same time, I think it is also a critique on what's going on in the world. You can see, actually, one of the things that's not in the story, but I talked to him about, was that while they try to take the best and leave the rest of economic theory, they do fall down on the side of what he termed social justice, and through our conversation kind of understood that it comes down on a sort of a leftist-ish perspective. He actually at one point said, I'm painfully in the center on most things, but also said that he comes at economics with a critical view, because at the end of the day, our economic system is leaving so many without.
Why is he saying he's painfully in the center? And what kind of reactions has he gotten? I mean, and presumably coming from the field of economics, maybe he comes from sort of a more center to right sort of perspective of things.
Yeah, I think it's painful to be in the center of any debate or any argument, because you have people hitting from both sides.
Right.
People say you haven't gone far enough on this, you go too far on that, you're wrong on that. And
he's the expert, whatever. Right.
And you know, he also one of the story started off with this piece about a quote from Einstein, or perhaps Roy Keane, but Einstein also, I think, was famously quoted as saying, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, then you don't know it yourself.
Right. I mean, he's not the only one
paraphrase,
he's not the only one trying to educate the masses, you know, by movies and cartoons and all that.
Actually, so we've been looking, in part of building this story, at what's going on in the world right now. In the last 5 or so years, there's been really an explosion of interest across the board in what was a closed off, ununderstandable field. People are starting to want to know about, and for example,
it affects their lives directly.
Yeah,
sure.
and post 2008, people it's very hard to hide from that fact that it affects your life directly.
Yeah.
And so documentaries are coming out. Money for Nothing and Inequality for All are two notable ones that came out recently. Money for Nothing is one that kind of looks at the Federal Reserve System in the States and kind of takes a view that the system of Federal Reserve control over currency and interest rates and yada, 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 is what is causing all of the problems.
Right.
Inequality for All takes a different sort of view. It's kind of looks at this globalization and deregulation and says these are destroying the middle class, both in America, where they're looking. The film is by Robert Reich, a director named Jacob Kornbluth, who worked with Robert Reich, who's a former Secretary of Labor for Clinton and a professor at Berkeley. And that one kind of looks at it takes a systemic approach. There's also these, as I mentioned in the story, The Crisis of Capitalism, a very popular YouTube animated film. And it goes on and on and on.
It's basically a sign of the times. We live in the age of information, so to speak, where, you know, the average person has access to whatever information practically they want, and things that are specifically directly relevant to us, which has never been the case before. It's unprecedented.
Right, and I think one of the positive effects of all these films and videos and projects coming out is that we have the possibility to absorb a lot are information and make sense of it by these directors and filmmakers and economists like David Mcwilliams are teachers in a way. And the more influences we can have, the more, I guess, we can understand who to look to for further answers, who we can believe later on, depending on what kind of thesis they're proposing. You can also see examples of this all over the place. Times Square, there's a giant installation. It just says, true or false, capitalism is good for me. And people go up and vote. And this is an example. Occupy Wall Street just opened up its own debit card. Or they're raising money for their own debit card anyways.
I have to be a little... Okay, well, on that note, I'm gonna, it's a little ironic, but unfortunately we can't continue on this very same topic. We have to end here. Thank you very much for watching. Please continue to send your comments and be here again tomorrow.